Grazie mille, signor Presidente Carli, per l'accoglienza, professor Abate, studenti, cari studenti. È un grande onore per me questa invitazione per fare questo piccolo discorso sulla Germania e l'idea, la visione della Germania nei confronti di queste sfide. So these are certainly not times for business as usual. Quite the contrary is true. What the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, 3 days after Russia's attack against Ukraine, called the Zeitenwende, the big turning point with regards to this brutal attack on Ukraine that goes far beyond Europe. I think we are currently in the middle of a profound transformation of almost all areas of life. That means geopolitical competition, climate change, digitalization, uncontrolled migration, but not to forget within our societies, fragmentation and polarization, which is increasingly also a problem. So Germany, Italy, and Europe have to give answers to these challenges. And I think we need to give them quickly, because the world around us is changing at a mind-boggling speed. And the European Union is now about to start a new sort of institutional cycle with a new commission. Frau von der Leyen presented the new commission today and a new parliament. And I think the next 5 years will be absolutely crucial if we want to assert ourselves as Europeans in a multipolar world, which is characterized by ever more competition. And in my view, the key question is, I mean, there's a question which we as Europeans need to answer, you as also a young generation need to answer. Do we want Europe as a pole in this multipolar world, able to defend our interests and our values, our way of life? Or are we happy with the Europe, which is a sort of a province in world politics, more object than subject? And I think that is a key question which we need to answer, to ourselves. And this question, I think, has far-reaching consequences for all of us, and particularly for you, the young generation. So today I would like to focus on 3 major challenges related to this key question. There are many others, but in order to save time, just 3. The first one is the crisis of Europe's competitiveness amidst increasing competition from China and the US. Second, the question, how can we safeguard stability and security in an increasingly dangerous and unstable world? And the third question is about the green transformation, which is absolutely necessary to fight climate change. But the question here is, how can decarbonization succeed without deindustrialization? So on these issues, in particular on the question on how to assure Germany's competitiveness, we are having quite a controversial debate in Germany. And you may have read that the disagreement within the so-called traffic light coalition, consisting of 3 very different parties in Germany, was so substantial that it finally broke apart some weeks ago. However, I think that the end of this coalition is not the end of the world, so we are going to have new elections in Germany on February 23rd, and I'm confident that as an outcome of these elections, we will have a more stable coalition government with a clear sense of where Germany will go in the years to come. So, some remarks on the 3 key areas I just mentioned. First, on strengthening European competitiveness. I think it's clear that Europe has some major structural problems here, and I think Mario Draghi, in his very important report on European competitiveness, report to the European Council, sort of demonstrated and made clear, what the problems are. And also the stagnating German economy is a case in point in that respect. So you may have read that we have currently a debate in Germany about the possible closure of 3 Volkswagen plants. And that clearly highlights that the situation is quite serious. I mean, Volkswagen is the icon of German industry. So if we have this sort of discussion, that says something. And it's also clear that, of course, that the problem with the competitiveness of the German automotive industry has a direct impact also on the Italian parts of the Italian industry. So there are both internal and external structural and cyclical reasons for the current problems in the German economy, but I mean, these are problems we all share in Europe. So these are high energy prices, problems on the Chinese market, at the same time increasing Chinese competition here in Europe, also due to highly subsidized Chinese products, shortage of skilled laborers, and also excessive bureaucracy. And US tariffs on EU products may exacerbate the situation. And in the automotive sector, we have the special problem that manufacturers and customers are also lacking some clarity about the pace of the transition towards electromobility. So there are many, many problems we need to tackle in order to improve our competitiveness. And Mario Draghi reports gives us important ideas how to do this. I can only say that in Germany, this report got a mostly positive response from the political parties from the center right to the center left, despite some objections on some aspects on the report. But there is a general view that the Draghi report should serve as a sort of guideline for the work of the European Commission over the next 5 years. The outgoing German government already in summer sort of launched what we call a growth initiative, which partially goes into the same direction as the proposals made by Mario Draghi. So key elements were, I mean, reducing the price for electricity, scrapping red tape, opening up opportunities to work beyond the pension threshold, more investment in research and development, and more support to startups. And of course, we were going to see what a new German government next spring will decide, but I think it will go very much into this direction. And generally, I would say, with regard to Germany, I'm not too pessimistic, because still the foundations of the German industry are strong, and one should not underestimate its resilience. However, looking at the bigger picture, it's clear that a more competitive Europe will require a fully developed single market. And that is the key message of another important report by another important Italian, Enrico Letta, reports made to the European Council in spring this year. Interestingly, in this report, he points out that the internal market goes beyond just economic cooperation. And not by coincidence, his report is titled Much More Than a Market. And not by coincidence, I think, and we can freely move around in all member countries. We can study abroad, we can take a job anywhere from Malta to the Polar Circle. And according to official figures, more than 600,000, even more Italians are living in Germany, and among them, more than 5,000 researchers. In fact, Italians are the biggest group of foreign researchers at German universities and research institutions, even before China and India. And that also shows, I mean, how far developed, our cooperation and mutual integration is. That is, of course, a tremendous contribution to our society. However, and that is something which struck me from the Letta report, the freedom to move must be accompanied also by a freedom to stay. So we must ensure a sustainable future and economic prosperity for all EU citizens in all member states. And that means creating opportunities everywhere in the European Union so that people that don't want to move have the option to stay and prosper where they are. That means that young Germans from the East shouldn't feel the need to move to the West, as just young Italians from Calabria should be able to make a living also in Calabria. But to achieve this goal, we will need continued solidarity among EU member states, and we need to complete the single market in order to fully exploit its potential in the field of energy, in the field of capital markets, banks, telecom, defense, etc. We usually talk about the enormous potential of the US internal market, but in terms of population, the EU internal market is bigger than the US internal market, but we do not fully exploit our potential. So that is something which we need to tackle as soon as possible. The issue of the necessary solidarity between EU member states, it takes me to the second major challenge, ensuring security in a quite difficult geopolitical landscape. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine has made us acutely aware that the times are gone in which we could simply take security for granted. Our security is being challenged by multidimensional threats. It's not only Russia. It is also about, the general geopolitical competition. It's about, the increasing sort of competition between the US and China. It's about cyber attacks. It's about AI. It's about the breakdown of arms control regimes. And it's also, finally, about information warfare. And since the Second World War, the United States have guaranteed our security, but now, particularly after Donald Trump's victory, many are looking with some concerns across the Atlantic. We will see how the American president will position himself on transatlantic relations, and there are two major questions here: the future support of the United States to the Ukraine and the future contribution of the United States to NATO. All that against the background, as I mentioned, of an ever stronger focus of the US on the Indo-Pacific and China. The conclusion of all that is Europe will have to make a much greater contribution both to supporting Ukraine and to our own security within the framework of NATO as the key framework for our collective defense and the European Union. And as Europeans, we need to increase our contribution to collective defense within NATO and invest more in our European capabilities. We need more Europe in NATO for the sake of a more balanced transatlantic relationship, and we need to enable the European Union also to act militarily if necessary. Today, 23 NATO member states are paying 2% or more of their GDP on defense. But already today, it is clear that 2% of the GDP will not be enough to meet Europe's defense requirements. And I expect a very interesting debate next year, also with the new Commission in Europe, on the question of how to finance these expenses. In any case, we will need more capable European defense capabilities for joint production and joint procurement in order to benefit from the economies of scale, to avoid procurement, to avoid costly duplication and fragmentation. I think that the highly performative German and Italian defense companies can make a very important contribution to a stronger European defense industrial base. I think in this context, for instance, of the new joint venture recently concluded between Leonardo and the German company Rheinmetall, but there's certainly more options than that. In addition, it is essential that we continue our financial and military support to Ukraine as long as it takes. The Ukraine is not only defending its population and its territory against an attack by Russia, but at the end of the day, this war and Ukraine's fight is also about the future of the European order and our values, and that's the reason why we need to support the Ukraine. And I think there's a strong support within the political class in Germany, from the center right to the center left, that Germany must continue its military support as the second largest arms supplier to Ukraine. At the same time, we also have a debate in Germany whether this is the right approach. So two parties which have been particularly successful in the recent state elections in Eastern Germany, the Alternative für Deutschland and the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, have a very different view on that. The third major challenge that is currently shaping our political landscape is the green transformation. Unfortunately, I have the impression that recently there seems to be a tendency to focus much more on imminent crisis than on the long-term challenge of climate change. But we must not lose focus on the necessary decarbonization of our industries and on reaching the climate goals as agreed upon in the framework of the European Union Green Deal and, of course, the Paris Accords. Much has been said about the costs of green transformation. That's true. But maybe we talk too little about the immense financial and human costs of climate change, as recently demonstrated in Spain or in Emilia-Romagna. Every tenth of a degree more leads to more floods and storms, more droughts and wildfires, more instability and more conflicts about natural resources. At the same time, it's clear that the green transformation must not go at the expense of our economic strength. In that respect, I think the question of energy is absolutely crucial, as it plays a decisive role for maintaining our industrial base and protecting the climate. Germany and Italy, as the two leading industrial nations in Europe with huge energy consumption, need green energy at the lowest possible price. And right now, I mean, the energy price we pay here in Europe is much higher than the energy price, for instance, the US or China are paying, and that brings it in a great disadvantage. And that is why the federal government in Berlin continues to focus on developing renewable energy as a sustainable and cost-effective energy source in view of increasing electrification in various sectors, such as transport or heating. Not without progress, I must say. So this year we produced more than 60% of our electricity from renewable energy. Up to 2 years ago, coal had been our largest source of electricity. There are also positive developments on the labor market when it comes to renewable energies. Job creation and green transition can go hand in hand. In 2022, for example, just under 400,000 people were already employed in the renewable energy sector. That is a clear growth, and maybe even some of you maybe should be working in this field as well. It's certainly an area which with a bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, these and other challenges call for a close strategic cooperation between Germany and Italy, as I said, the two leading industrial nations in Europe, but also the founding members of the European Union. In many respects, our two countries sit in the same boat, facing similar challenges. I mentioned some of them. That's dependence on energy, raw material. Our economic structure is similar, with a strong role of small and medium enterprises, etc., etc. So I think we're really sitting in the same boat. And with this in mind, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister Meloni, launched the German-Italian Action Plan as a framework for joint action almost 1 year ago. And I think we are making good progress on the implementation of this action plan. I would only like to mention one lighthouse project, that is the so-called South Central H2 corridor. That's a corridor which should bring green energy, green hydrogen from northern Africa over Italy, Austria, and then finally to southern Germany. So that is really a strategic partnership between Germany and Italy in the field of renewable energy. But I would also like to emphasize the remarkable high degree of agreement between our two countries on important strategic issues, on the Ukraine, for instance, on the Middle East, Africa, NATO, transatlantic relations, also migration, which was a question which more was controversial. I think we have made significant progress, and being two leading European expert nations, we share the conviction and the vital interest that Europe must remain competitive in the global economy. And that is why we also agree on the necessity for an open and non-protectionist EU trade policy. And we all hope that still in this year, finally, the Mercosur agreement will be signed. I think that's a very important strategic accord. And I think we also agree that enlarging the European Union is a strategic necessity, as reforming the European Union and its decision-making process is also indispensable to enable our European Union to act more decisively. Germany and Italy have been influencing each other for centuries, and I think we share a common European history and values, but also, as I said, similar geopolitical and demographic challenges. Germany and Italy today are strong partners that can really work together for the mutual benefit of our two countries, for Europe, but also for the liberal world order. There are many challenges to be tackled, and whether we will be able to master these challenges in the years to come will depend increasingly on you, the younger generation. And talking to young people in Germany, in my former posting in France, and now in Italy, I see many concerns from the young people about their future, and these concerns are absolutely justified. But I also see a lot of impressive engagement, idealism, and enthusiasm. And in the book published by Professor Carli titled Italia nel Mondo Nuovo, a young lady, your generation, wrote, ai giovani non mancano gli ideali, ma la fiducia. Hanno bisogno di qualcuno che creda in loro. I agree. You are not lacking ideals, and certainly you want to make this world, your country, but also Europe, a better place. And indeed, idealism and courage are needed given the size of the challenges we are facing, and I see it as a part of my responsibility and that of my generation, but also the responsibility of our governments to support you in any respect and to show the necessary trust and confidence in your abilities that you deserve. So thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion.